What a motley bunch we are.
We're just gauging, trying to get our heads around what happened today. What's your assessment of where we're going next?
Well, Parliament today voted for delay. I'm afraid, fond as I am as Dominic, I think we can safely say we're fond of one another as constituency neighbours. But what Dominic and others have done is shift the goalposts again. So for people like me, it's incredibly frustrating. The Ben Act was put in place, presumably thinking Boris Johnson would never pull off the feat of getting a deal that people like me would be willing to vote for. Well, he has. Well, instead of just approving it and fulfilling Ben and going on to legislate for it, they've amended the motion, denied approval, and just forced us now to go on into the legislation without having approved the treaty in terms of the Act, which Dominic forced me to put in place. And this is Dominic knows he forced me to put that meaningful vote in place, and then they keep.
Parliament did rather than
well,
me.
yeah, but you and I, you know. Yeah. But this is ridiculous. Here I am, obeying the Constitution, using normal politics, driving things forward with propriety and in the rules in here. But what's happening is that standing orders have been overturned, put an unconstitutional Act of Parliament through, no money resolution, breaking the House of Commons rules to get there, no Queen's consent on royal prerogative, no scrutiny because it got rammed through so fast. Then the same people who put that through are telling me there's not going to be enough scrutiny on the deal. Look, the absurdity is just legion.
Lewis, you wanted to jump in, I can see.
No, I was just going to ask, I mean, you talk about, Steve, I mean, you're absolutely right in terms of say a lot of this stuff has been quite unorthodox and unusual.
I'm impressed to hear you say I'm absolutely right. I'll get you to tweet it.
Yeah, I will, absolutely. I'll tweet it right now. But just on the question you talk about constitutionality, on the basis of the rule of law, will the Prime Minister be writing the letter to the European Union tonight?
There is absolutely no way that the law officers, good people like Dominic, now it's Geoffrey Cox, there's no way he's going to let the Prime Minister break law even if he wanted to. He's not going to do it, but the law does not oblige him to negotiate an extension, and he's been absolutely clear that he's not going to. Now, the fact is, he's made it perfectly plain to Europe's leaders that he doesn't want an extension. So they know he doesn't want an extension.
So you think they'll veto?
We've heard, well, I don't know about that. Jean-Claude Juncker said he doesn't, whatever his words were, but he doesn't want an extension. I think President Macron said it. But look, what an ignominious thing it will be if the United Kingdom, having negotiated a deal, people like me compromise to back it, we end up being thrown out with no deal because Dominic, who wants to avoid no deal, did the things he did. It would just be absurd.
Do you think the government would have won on a straight up or down today?
I think so, yeah.
Then why didn't they just go ahead with it?
Well, they did go ahead with it. I'm afraid I've had this out on Newsnight just now. The vote went through Parliament. Dominic will appreciate this. The motion was amended and then went through without a division. So it's not that it was pulled, it went through without a division, but it's just it was rendered meaningless by the Oliver Letwin amendment. And this is crazy. So I was forced to put in the legislation by Parliament, led by Dominic, to have meaningful votes. And then today, when Parliament had the opportunity to have a meaningful vote, to get a deal, to avoid no deal, Parliament made the vote meaningless to push it off into the long
But the
grass.
reason, Steve, why this happened is because there's a total breakdown of trust between the Prime Minister, this Prime Minister specifically, and a large swathe of the House of Commons, including a large number of Conservative MPs. His behaviour in August, the attacks on generalised attacks coming from Mr Cummings, his use of prorogation to try to silence the Commons, have all created a rod for his own back. And the consequence of that is he's not believed on anything he says. And actually, I'm afraid that's correct, because he often says things which are mutually contradictory. He was doing it in the debate today when he was making his statement.
There are millions who've lost trust in Parliament, full
Yes.
stop. Millions of people who are saying to people like you're just trying to frustrate
Yeah, but I
Brexit
come back to
by
the point
bringing
I
in this
was
Oliver
making
Letwin
before
amendment.
Steve arrived. He may not have heard with all the noise in the background, which is that fundamentally there is a majority in the House of Commons that thinks that this deal is really bad for the country's future. Now, there are some who say that despite the fact they think it's really bad, they will vote for it. But it's an underlying mood music of utter depression and demoralisation at the damage we're about to do to ourselves. Now, Steve may not feel that, but I have to say to Steve, he's in a minority. And this is the fundamental problem of asking a Parliament, the House of Commons, to do something which a majority of MPs think, God, this is really bad for me and my constituents.
To see today, did we?
Can I make 2 points in response? Dominic and I, fond as we are of one another, stood on the same manifesto the same manifesto and
We
made the
did.
same promises to carry things through, including no deal's better than a bad deal.
Well, I can come back to that in a moment.
Well, and
but
I read your
but-
election address as well, but can I just have a go?
Yeah, okay, I'll
Right.
come in a moment.
But the other point is, the destination which is sketched out in this political declaration, is, as far as I can see, I've read it very carefully, is entirely consistent with the offer the EU made to us in March last year, while I was still a minister. So it feels like a million years ago now, but a free trade agreement, no tariffs, no quantitative restrictions, including services, security, cooperation, research, innovation, education, culture, a range of other things. That is a broad and deep partnership consistent with being an independent country. The political declaration on the future talks about having an autonomous legal order, talks about our regulatory independence. Now, if we negotiate courageously and competently, we can deliver a great deal out of that and still be great friends and neighbours. And I'm sorry you don't feel the same, but the EU's perfectly capable of concluding these deals, as they've shown with Canada and with Japan. Now,
They take a long time, though, usually, don't they? They do
well,
take
except
much
of course,
longer than a year.
but we're already converged. What we need, there's no appetite in our country for immediate rapid divergence. So what we need is a method to diverge slowly according to the preferences of the public. And that's why when Plan A Plus was launched by people, including my circle, written by Shankar Singham and Radomir Talcoat, they included the one chapter that they got drafted to stick in that paper was the chapter on regulatory divergence, because we realised it's so important. The frustration for somebody like me is from the back benches, working in a circle with people outside. We've produced all the answers, including on the Irish border, which, by the way, is now in the political... our answers are now in the political declaration to be brought in, as the Prime Minister said, to replace the Irish protocol, which so many of us object to. And it's work that we've done from the back benches, and now it's in there.
Listen, I'm just going to ask you both this question. If you can keep it brief, that'd be great. Are we leaving on October 31st?
No, clearly not. And there's no possibility of leaving on October the 31st, because the time to enact the withdrawal agreement implementation bill properly was always going to take longer than the 10 days that we have available.
Could it be done?
If Dominic is willing to put the implementing legislation through with the same alacrity that they put through the Ben Act, yeah.
Yeah, but we put the Ben Act through quickly because we were about to be prorogued. Okay. I'm afraid if the Prime Minister hadn't prorogued us, some of this toxicity wouldn't have crept into the relationship.
No between us,
you
Dominic.
keep reminding us that you're both friends.
Never has been and never will be.
Thank you both,
Thank
gentlemen. Thank you all very much indeed. Shaking hands there. Lovely to see. Thank you.